to introduce today's call.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Good afternoon from Geneva. Thank you to all of you for joining again this call. As my colleague Adrian said, we have a great panel today. The backdrop is still extremely serious globally. Based on the COVID-19 situation, we're close to 5 million cases globally, close to 325,000 people that have died due to the pandemic. We are also seeing that the epicenter is moving. We have seen now in many Asian and European countries that the numbers have peaked, but we know seeing that if you look at the 20 countries in the world with the most new cases, 17 out of these 20 countries are emerging economies and developing countries. So this is a very serious development, and of course this will potentially also have a lot of negative impact on a lot of the things that we have achieved during the last decades. The World Bank yesterday, in a report that many of you probably have seen, said that if we don't put the right measures in place to fight this in the developing world, we can see 60 million new people entering extreme poverty this year. And for the first time in 2 decades, we will see also the global poverty rate increasing. The latest numbers from the bank is also quite grim, contraction of 5% in the global economy this year. But this platform is about action, is about public-private partnership. We have 1,100 organizations, companies on board. We have more than 40 concrete projects now that are addressed to fight the impact of this pandemic. Very, very pleased to again see you, Prime Minister Imran Khan. Last time we had the dialogue was in Davos. We did not expect that this new decade was going to start this way. Thank you for joining us, and also thank you for being willing to share with us how this situation looks from Islamabad, from Pakistan, and the measures that you are taking. Prime Minister, welcome.
Thank you very much. Well, let me just say that the experience of the developed world is completely different to what we are facing in the developing world. And in countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, specifically the Indian subcontinent, our experience is somewhat different. Firstly, the speed at which COVID-19 spread in Europe and in the United States, we are not experiencing that same sort of speed. On the other hand, we are still facing rising number of cases, and we still haven't reached our peak here. But from day one, the difference between, say, what we've seen in Europe and in the United States, and in fact even in China, the difference is that we had to face this twin challenge. One was to stem the growth of the virus, so hence the lockdown. But the bigger challenge, and increasingly in our countries, the bigger challenge is how to mitigate the effects of lockdown on our population with this rising poverty. To give people an example of what we are facing in Pakistan, and I think it's the same sort of situation in India and possibly in Bangladesh. In Pakistan, we have 25 million workers who are either daily wages or get paid weekly or are self-employed. So when we locked down like the whole of the world to stop the spread of the virus, all these people became unemployed. And when you're talking about 25 million workers, you're talking about 25 million families. And actually it has affected round about almost 120, 150 million people. And these 120 and 50 million people face stark poverty. Unless the men or the women who were working, unless they work, they cannot feed their families. So what we did was, and I'm very proud of my government, we came up with this cash transfer program. And we touched 15 million families. So far, we have touched 15 million families with cash transfers. And this is what's mitigated the effects of the lockdown. But this is only a short-term solution. So therefore, despite the rising cases in our country, we have decided to go and ease the lockdown. We have started to open up our businesses, our construction industry, so that people can find employment. Because there's no way the government can give handouts to so many people. And because of this huge numbers of the informal economy, the only way we can reach our people is by allowing them to work. So here we face this dilemma. One, we still have a problem of growing cases, and we still have to be careful about the spread of the virus. But on the other hand, unless we open up our economy, we have millions facing starvation. And this is not the problem faced in the Western countries, but the Western countries also face this problem, this balance between now saving the economy and at the same time worrying about, even if the cases are going down, they're worrying about in case there's a spike. So the way forward, we have, this year we have, as a country, as a nation, we realize that we have to live with this virus. At least until a vaccine comes out, we feel that this year we just have to learn how to live with it and balance this. So to balance this, what we have raised a volunteer force of 1 million volunteers who will help the administration, because the administration is already overburdened. The law enforcement agencies, they've become overburdened by trying to impose the lockdown. So we decided that the only way is that have a volunteer force, let the administration do the normal work and the police, while this volunteer force goes and encourages people to not to have gatherings, and when they go to work, have these SOPs so that they at least try and keep the social distancing. So this year we feel that we have a very tough year to balance this act. We have suffered economically. Just before this COVID-19 hit us, we had managed to balance our twin budgets, the current account deficit and the fiscal deficit. After a very painful series of reforms, we had just about balanced and were thinking of the economy of growing. And so it's hit us at the worst time. But what we feel is that the coming year is not just a challenge for Pakistan. We all know it's a global challenge. And what we feel is that there has to be a lot more interaction between the countries in dealing with this challenge than has been so far. Understandably, because when it hit the countries, it's quite unprecedented, the measures they took. So every country looked inside, became insular. But I feel eventually we are all connected, and the response has to be global. There has to be a way of picking up countries which are struggling right now, and especially in the developing world. I've spoken to the Ethiopian Prime Minister, the Egyptian President, Nigerian Prime Minister. All of them are facing similar problems to what we are facing. Falling exports. The export orders have gone down because obviously the problems faced by the global community. But also additionally, we face the problems of falling remittances. Our country depended a lot on remittances from the Gulf countries, and because of oil prices crashing, that has had an effect on on our workers, our remittances. So we are, I guess everyone is facing the challenges, but we have geared up. Economically, we've got our think tanks working on how we're going to deal with the coming year. At the same time, we have a very good developed a system of a national command and control center. And the whole idea is that every day the whole idea of the center is to balance the whole thing. They watch where the cases are growing, how we are going to deal with them, isolate individual areas where there is fear of spreading, and at the same time, how we can keep our economy going. So I guess this is what the world community faces.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prime Minister, for sharing this. And I think we are all have a lot of respect for the very difficult dilemmas leaders are now in between lives and livelihood. And especially in poor countries, this is really a huge task. And as you underlined, when we met in Davos, we thought the global economy was going to grow with 3% this year, and now it's going to contract with 5%. So this will have huge impact. And I guess that the global debt situation is also something that is really a serious issue for Pakistan. I'm going to go to the Development and Trade Minister of the Netherlands, but if you can very shortly, Prime Minister, just in 1 minute say something about the global debt situation and also the special situation for developing countries, because there is a discussion about a global plan here.
You know, G20 countries have come up with a debt relief. They've just come up with a policy of debt relief, but it needs to be, there need to be more details and more work on this. But let me just put it this way. A lot of the developing world faces the situation where, because of their debt servicing, their fiscal space has contracted. They don't have enough space actually to cope with this, this challenge of health facilities, because the biggest problem caused by COVID is it's overwhelmed the health facilities, the hospitals. So therefore, the reason why there should be a debt relief, and the G20 is looking into it, because we need that fiscal space now to divert resources towards health and also to environment. And unfortunately, right now, that space is not there. And as I said, I spoke to the heads of Nigeria, Ethiopia, and Egypt. All of them face this similar situation to us.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Prime Minister. Alluding to is kind of a bridge, because there is an imminent need for stimulus to make sure that things are also working until growth is back. I think this is a nice segue also to Sigrid Kaag, because Sigrid, you're not only the Trade Minister of the Netherlands, but you're also the Development Minister. We'll come back to the situation in your country, but what Prime Minister Khan was alluding to here was the G20 is looking at a way to also make sure that people are fed, that things don't totally stop now in the immediate crisis. This is what stimulus is needed for, and a debt relief will possibly give a bit of relief there. Any thoughts on this?
Yes, no, thank you very much, Borge. And indeed, I was very inspired by